Jim Jordan passionately declares that President Trump is the rightful leader for the country. He reveals 3 important letters, each showing a different side of a complex story filled with intrigue and deception. Jim Jordan warns about serious national security threats and calls for quick action. He compares the current situation to the past 4 years. We went from having a secure border to no border, from safe streets to high crime rates, from $2 gas to $3, $4, or $5 gas, and from stable prices to record inflation. He also points out the shift in foreign policy from Trump, who was strong and respected, to Biden, with issues like Russia invading Ukraine and China's actions. Elections are about choosing between different options and deciding which side to support. It's clear that President Trump is the right choice because he performed well in the past. Jim Jordan is demanding accountability after revelations of FBI misconduct. He insists that the FBI should not police itself and that standards must be upheld to ensure justice. He points out that the FBI has a history of missteps like spying on a presidential campaign, censoring Americans, and labeling pro-life Catholics as extremists. He argues that the FBI has abused its power 278,000 times by not following proper rules. To address this, he believes that FISA should not be reauthorized without including stricter oversight measures. The focus is now on who will come in second, because President Trump is expected to win, possibly by a large margin. His rally speeches suggest that his victory will send a strong message not just to New Hampshire and South Carolina, but to the entire country. I believe Trump will be the nominee and the next president. While I respect Ron DeSantis, having worked with him in Congress, I am fully behind Trump because I believe he is the best choice, Jim said. Jim Jordan has raised serious concerns about a Georgia judge's handling of Trump's legal case. He claims the judge used taxpayer money to target Trump and other individuals, including some U.S. senators. Jordan reveals that a whistleblower from the Fulton County DA's office has accused Fani Willis of misusing federal funds. Jordan has subpoenaed Willis to investigate these claims and other related issues, as he believes her actions in the case have been compromised. Jim Jordan questions why Attorney General Garland allowed the statute of limitations to expire on key cases. He emphasizes the significance of this issue by noting that the statute of limitations for 2014 and 2015, years when Hunter Biden received income from Burisma, has lapsed. Jordan points out that Hunter Biden earned millions from Burisma during this period. He wasn't qualified for the board position, as he admitted, stating that he got the job because of his family name. Burisma executives told Biden they needed help under pressure, and Joe Biden used U.S. tax money to have the prosecutor removed who was putting pressure on Burisma. He adds that these points match what a confidential source reported to the FBI, which was recorded in a 1023 form that Mr. Wray didn't want Congress to see. Jordan is questioning why the statute of limitations was allowed to lapse on these significant tax cases involving Burisma income. Jim Jordan highlights another important point. The investigation was led by Mr. Weiss, who was appointed by President Trump. Jordan says that Mr. Weiss will address questions about the case in a public report to Congress, but he himself does not know the answers. Jordan questions if the lawyers were just careless and let the statute of limitations lapse by mistake, but he doubts that's the case. He notes that they had a tolling agreement, which means there was an official pause on the statute of limitations. Jordan also examines the actions of key figures closely, calling for full transparency and accountability. He mentions that their testimony remained consistent despite intense questioning from Democrats in July. On July 10th, David Weiss told Senator Graham he had not requested special counsel status. Yet on August 11th, the Attorney General announced Weiss as special counsel. Jordan wonders what happened in those 32 days and credits the whistleblowers and the judge in Delaware for preventing a plea deal that could have covered up the issues. Jim Jordan discusses the role of a special counsel and stresses the need for thorough investigations to uncover the truth and achieve justice. He points out that there were talks about extending the statute of limitations for Hunter Biden's case, but then a decision was made to let it expire. Jordan wants to know who made that decision and why. He notes that Mr. Weiss, who was in charge of the investigation, always made the necessary decisions. He believes that while Mr. Weiss will answer questions about this, the real reason for letting the statute of limitations lapse is obvious. The investigation was delayed to avoid addressing issues related to Burisma, which is connected to the White House. Jordan claims that the investigation was intentionally slowed down. Witnesses like Shapley and Ziegler have said that the DOJ and the Delaware Attorney's Office delayed the process. Shapley, an FBI agent, and Ms. Hawley both expressed frustration with the slow pace. According to Jordan, the delays were deliberate, meant to let the statute of limitations run out and avoid dealing with Burisma. Jim Jordan questions why David Weiss, who was supposed to handle Hunter Biden's case, was blocked from prosecuting in Washington, D.C. Jordan expected the Attorney General to intervene, but it seems he did not. Now, the special counsel might extend the investigation even longer. Weiss is set to testify before the committee on October 11th, and Jordan hopes they will keep that promise. Jordan also discusses the House GOP's plans to investigate Hunter Biden, vowing to persist in finding the truth. He stresses that the Republicans, led by Speaker McCarthy, will not increase taxes. Jordan argues that Americans are already suffering from inflation, and Democrats shouldn't add more taxes. He believes Speaker McCarthy, who faced tough challenges to become Speaker of the House, will secure a better deal for Americans than President Biden, who has struggled with various issues including the border, inflation, and foreign policy. Jim Jordan is focusing on the plea agreement handled by the Justice Department. He notes that David Weiss's statements about his authority have been inconsistent. In a letter from June 7th, Weiss claimed he had full authority to bring charges wherever and whenever he wanted. However, 23 days later, Weiss said he could only bring charges within his own district. Jordan questions which statement is correct and criticizes the Justice Department's attempt to hide details in the plea agreement, which the judge rejected. Jordan plans to interview 11 people involved in the investigation to uncover the truth about the deal. In defending President Trump, Jim Jordan argues that any indictment attempts are politically motivated and a form of election interference. He believes that such actions will only strengthen Trump's support among voters. Jordan cites recent polls showing Trump leading in the Republican primary and predicts his numbers will improve. He argues that ordinary Americans recognize this as an attack on someone who is fighting for them and their values, which will only increase Trump's support. The Speaker has stated that if the evidence continues to grow, an impeachment inquiry could become necessary. The decision will be made by the entire conference. There is increasing evidence of suspicious activity, including large sums of money going to the Biden family and Devon Archer's recent testimony. This testimony outlines how everything is connected, including the meeting in Dubai. If the situation calls for it, the Speaker has made it clear that House Republicans will move forward with an impeachment inquiry. They are committed to doing their job under the Constitution and overseeing the executive branch. On another note, Jim Jordan agrees with Secretary Clinton's recent statement about concerns regarding President Biden. Jordan believes Biden's performance has been poor across many areas, from having a secure border to none, from safe streets to high crime, from $2 gas to $5 gas, and from stable prices to record inflation. Jordan argues that Biden's foreign policy has made the U.S. appear weak compared to the Trump administration. Given these issues and Biden's age, even some Democrats are questioning his leadership. We've reached a point where the situation has quickly moved beyond just words and politics. Now, illegal immigrants, including those from prisons and mental institutions, are entering the country, and there's talk of giving them the right to vote, he said. Elon Musk strongly supports one person's actions and decisions throughout their life, but he acknowledges that no one agrees with everything someone does. He emphasizes that with only two choices for president, it's important to pick the right leader. Musk admires Trump's courage, noting that even when faced with danger, Trump remained defiant and supportive, which he finds impressive. Musk believes that a president should be strong and brave, even though everyone has flaws. In his view, Trump showed more strength compared to Biden, who struggled with simple tasks, making Trump the preferable choice for dealing with tough world leaders. We need a secure border, safe and clean cities, and a slowdown in government spending. Musk warns that current spending rates are heading towards a fiscal disaster. This year, interest payments on U.S. debt have already exceeded the entire budget for the Defense Department. If spending continues at this rate, federal taxes will only cover interest payments, leading to a financial crisis similar to what happened in Argentina. Argentina once thrived, but fell from grace due to financial mismanagement. We should not take American prosperity for granted. Reducing government size and spending is essential to living within our means. We also need to actively work on reducing laws and regulations. Without this, increasing regulations could make everything illegal and lead to an Orwellian situation where people can hardly do anything legally. For example, SpaceX faced restrictions that prevented hiring non-permanent U.S. residents for many years. SpaceX creates advanced rocket technology, which is closely linked to high-level weapons technology like intercontinental ballistic missiles. Rocket technology is crucial because it can deliver payloads anywhere on Earth. Musk reveals that the government threatened him with imprisonment if he hired anyone who wasn't a U.S. permanent resident. The government's concern was that non-residents might leave the country and potentially share SpaceX's technology with nations that could harm the U.S. Musk believes this reasoning is sound. Musk also criticizes Washington for ignoring what people want. After 35 years in the city, he left due to lawmakers' focus on sending money abroad while ignoring domestic issues. He points out that the U.S. has lost more citizens in the past 4 years than in World War II, and questions whether anyone in Washington cares. Musk is frustrated that despite knowing where threats are coming from and how to address them, the U.S. military and leadership are not taking action to protect the country and its citizens. He feels this lack of action is a clear sign that the government does not care about the American people. Donald Trump, despite differing opinions, is someone I believe genuinely cares about the people. I know him well, and he is incredibly funny, which shows he has empathy and perspective. Besides his humor, Trump takes his role seriously. Just as a father cares for his family, an officer looks after his team, and a president serves his citizens. Tucker Carlson suggests that if the attempt on Trump had succeeded, Biden would have likely remained a presidential candidate, changing the political scene. Carlson believes that if Trump's ambush had worked, it would have had major implications, suggesting a broader connection between these events. He feels we are at a point where things have quickly moved beyond words and politics. It seems like there are people willing to go to extreme lengths for power, and that the current situation is shaped by those who are armed and in control. Carlson is not surprised given what he has observed in the U.S. over the past 20 years. If we're going to abandon all our standards, norms, and traditions, starting from scratch as if history doesn't matter, then let's be completely honest about everything. If they already wish to silence you, why hold back the truth? He said. He further stated, "I'm curious about this idea that female political leadership is something it's clearly not. So why do we, especially those on the right, feel the need to pretend otherwise? Why not just be upfront and stop playing along with these obvious falsehoods? It's not convincing. Here's a young, awkward 20-year-old who's been bullied, doesn't fit in, and even failed at something as basic as the rifle team. He has no social media presence, and his search history shows no interest in any of this. Yet somehow, we're expected to believe he's more sophisticated than he seems." Carlson raises serious concerns about the Secret Service's actions, questioning how they failed to stop a sniper from shooting Trump. The Secret Service counter-sniper is lying down, and clearly has the shooter in his sights. He's watching him. Yet he doesn't take the shot until after the sniper has already fired at Trump. How could a trained Secret Service sniper see a man with a rifle just 140 yards away and not take him down? I don't get it. The Secret Service needs to prove they didn't let this happen, because it sure looks like they did. Why isn't there a group of senators, Congress members, and citizens demanding answers at the Secret Service headquarters? Given what's happened, they're presumed guilty until they explain otherwise, and nobody's pushing them to do that. The attempt on Trump's life highlights just how serious and high stakes this situation is. It's a wake-up call that people seem to be ignoring. Biden was the worst president our country has ever seen, and she's known as the worst vice president. Without a teleprompter, she can't even speak. Did you see her the other night? They put a camera in her face and she couldn't get a word out. We've just endured 4 years. Let's not go through it again. Trump criticizes the Biden administration's negotiations, claiming his leadership fixed the harmful deals and brought things back to normal. We got our people back, but we made some really terrible deals to do it. Sure, it's good that they're back, but what kind of precedent does that set? What message are we sending? He then shifts his focus to Bert Harris, labeling her as the most extreme left-wing candidate in history, even more so than Bernie Sanders. She's worse than Bernie, and on top of that, she's got a really low IQ. We don't need someone like that in charge. The Chinese are thrilled. They love dealing with low IQ leaders, and now they've got one here. She's awful, even worse than he is. And as for him, they took everything from him, but I don't feel sorry for him. He's weaponized everything in this country, which no one's ever done before. He might not even realize they did a coup on him, but deep down he knows. They told him, Joe, you got 14 million votes, but you're going to step down now. You're giving it up, Joe, one way or another. And though he resisted, insisting he was elected fairly, they made it clear. You're out, Joe. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, but you're leaving. Most people are protected by their unions or police departments, but if someone was being unfairly prosecuted for doing their job well or for making an innocent mistake, I would want to help them. There's a big difference between being a bad person and making an honest mistake, he stated. He also argues that illegal immigrants are being allowed into the country with the promise of votes, which undermines the democratic process. Right now, you have illegal aliens coming in, many from prisons and mental institutions, and they want to give them the right to vote. I don't think they should have that right. They came here illegally, and it's taking the vote away from those who have been here for a long time and have worked hard. If I'm not elected, you're going to see this happening. But if I am, you won't have any problem. The people who came here illegally are causing others to lose their jobs, and I don't see why anyone would want to allow that to happen. I want to start by saying that I was invited here with the understanding that my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, would be present. But they're not here. You invited me under false pretenses. Then you said Zoom wasn't an option. But now she's doing it via Zoom and not attending in person. On top of that, you were half an hour late. I have too much respect for you to be late, so let's just be clear about that. Apparently, there was an issue with the equipment or something. When asked about his impact on the black community, Trump responded confidently, I've been the best president for black Americans since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer. Reflecting on a specific moment, Trump described how a video he watched over 1,000 times deeply impacted him. I watched what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, and it felt like everything changed after that moment. The convention, the nation, the world, and even Donald Trump himself. When I stood up after being bloodied and raised my hand, I realized that was a turning point. I was no longer just a man. It's hard to believe, but I think fate played a role in what happened. The attempt on Trump's life didn't weaken him. Instead, it solidified his position as a true leader of the nation. Before that moment, Trump was just seen as a former president, a nominee, or a potential future president. But after that, he became more than just a title. He became the leader of a nation. In Washington, people often see the president as the highest figure, the one with the most power. But having the title of president doesn't automatically give someone legitimacy. Just because someone is called the president doesn't make them a true leader. You could technically put anyone in the position, even through dishonest means, but that doesn't make them a real leader. Leadership isn't something you can simply assign. It's about being the bravest person, and that's something natural and undeniable. At that moment, months before the election, Donald Trump became the leader of the nation, and I believe that experience changed him deeply. Trump later shared his admiration for the crowd's bravery during the tragedy, noting how they didn't flee in fear. He contacted Trump that same night, and instead of talking about himself, Trump expressed how proud he was of the crowd's courage. That moment revealed something important. Trump's courage had inspired his supporters, giving them strength. The idea that Trump was a selfish person, something I'd heard for years, didn't align with what he showed that night. His focus wasn't on himself, but on his people. One thing that stood, which none has mentioned, is how Trump responded after being attacked. He had the perfect chance to stir up anger and division, an opportunity most politicians wouldn't hesitate to take. They'd jump at the chance to ask, "How did this happen? Who's responsible?" Those are valid questions, but instead of fueling the fire, Trump chose to focus on bringing the country together. That was surprising, especially since he's often labeled as divisive and irresponsible. But in that moment, his actions were some of the most responsible and unifying I've ever seen from a leader. To sum it up, Trump's entire public life, from the moment he descended that escalator 9 years ago until today, has been about one thing: reminding us that a true leader's duty is to his people and his country above all else. That's what it means to be a leader, and it's also what democracy is all about. Carlson argues that democracy is about the people being the true owners of their country, not just temporary occupants. He believes this idea is under attack. Democracy means that the citizens of a country truly own it. They're not just renters or servants, they're the rightful owners. For that to be true, their leaders need to represent them, doing what the people want or something close to it. But when leaders ignore the will of the people for decades, it's no longer a democracy. Ironically, even though Trump's project is often criticized as being anti-democratic, his goal is actually to restore democracy in the United States. Jin then asks a thought-provoking question. Would you have ever imagined, just 5 years ago, that you'd be donating a significant amount of money to help Trump get elected? What's your thought on Jim Jordan? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next video.